Another important document that was enacted within the package is the requirements for the medication guide and summary of product characteristics of medicinal products for human use. The document defines the requirements for product information. A medication guide is the same as patient leaflet and contains product information in lay language for patients and consumers, whereas the SMPC is intended to provide product information for healthcare professionals. The requirements consist of the main text and 18 appendices, all sourced from the EA legal acts and guidelines. The main text corresponds to the main text of the European Commission Guideline on Summary of Product Characteristics. Appendix 1 contains a list of excipients in the Summary of Product Characteristics and Package Leaflet of Medicinal Products for Human Use and corresponds to European Commission Guidelines on excipients in the label and Package Leaflet of Medicinal Products for Human Use. Appendix 2 outlines requirements for the description of composition of pegylated conjugated proteins in the Summary of Product Characteristics and Package Leaflet and is based on EMA guidance on the description of composition of pegylated conjugated proteins in the SPC. Appendix 3 lays down requirements for the description of pharmaceutical aspects in the Summary of Product Characteristics and Package Leaflet for human vaccines, and is adapted from the EMA guideline on pharmaceutical aspects of the product information for human vaccines. Appendix 4 gives guidance on dictionaries to be used for the description of adverse reactions in PL and SMPC and corresponds to the annex of the European Commission Guideline on Summary of Product Characteristics. Appendix 5 contains examples of statements for use in Section 4.6, Pregnancy and Lactation, of the Summary of Product Characteristics and is adapted from the statements for use in Section 4.6, Pregnancy and Lactation, of the Summary of Product Characteristics. Appendix 3 to the EMA Guideline on Risk Assessment of Medicinal Products on Human Reproduction and Lactation, from data to labeling. Appendix 6 provides standard statements for the declaration of storage conditions for medicinal products and is based on Appendix 3 to the EMA Quality Review of Documents templates for human medicinal products. Appendix 7 outlines requirements for the statement of maximum shelf life for sterile products for human use after first opening or following reconstitution and corresponds to the EMA note for guidance on maximum shelf life for sterile products for human use after first opening or following reconstitution. Appendix 8 lays down rules of drafting combined summaries of product characteristics and patient leaflets for the different product strengths and is based on the EMA policy on combined summaries of product characteristics. Appendix 9 contains recommendations on the expression of strength, quantity, in the names of medicinal products and is adapted from the EMA Quality Review of Documents recommendations on the expression of strength in the name of centrally authorized human medicinal products. Appendix 10 provides a template for the Summary of Product Characteristics and is adapted from the EMA QRD Product Information Template, Annex 1 SMPC. Appendix 11 lays down the rules of completion of the template for the Summary of Product Characteristics and corresponds to the EMA QRD Product Information Annotated Template, Annex 1 SMPC. Appendix 12 outlines the requirements for preparation of medication guide, patient leaflet for a medicinal product and is based on Title 5 of Directive 2001/83 and the MHRA Best Practice Guidance on Patient Information Leaflets. Appendix 13 gives a sample patient leaflet for a homeopathic medicinal product subject to a simplified registration and is based on the EU member states template. Appendix 14 provides a standard method for undertaking user testing of a packaged leaflet in target populations and corresponds to the annex to the European Commission Guideline on the readability of the labeling and packaged leaflet of medicinal products for human use. Appendix 15 provides a template for the medication guide and is adapted from the EMA QRD Product Information Template, Annex 3B Patient Leaflet. Appendix 16 lays down rules of completing of the template for the medication guide and corresponds to the EMA QRD Product Information Annotated Template, Annex 3B. Appendix 17 outlines rules for ensuring readability of the patient leaflet and labeling and is based on the European Commission guideline on the readability of the labeling and package leaflet of medicinal products for human use, Chapter 1. Finally, Appendix 18 contains quality criteria for patient leaflets which correspond to the quality criteria for PILs outlined in Annex 1 to the MHRA Best Practice Guidance on Patient Information Leaflets. Rules of conducting bioequivalence studies of medicinal products within the Eurasian Economic Union are another major document within the November 2016 package. The rules consist of the main text plus 8 appendices. The main text and appendices 1, 4, 5, and 8 correspond to the EMA guideline on the investigation of bioequivalence, whereas the definitions were extracted from the U.S. Code of Federal Regulations and EMA Pharmacokinetics Working Party's Q&A document. Also, a brief insertion on multiple cohorts, based on the FDA guidance on statistical approaches to establishing bioequivalence, has been introduced. Appendices 2 and 3, Pharmacodynamic and Clinical Endpoint B, respectively, are extracted from Chapters 8 and 9 of the WHO Multi-Source Generic Pharmaceutical Products, Guidelines on Registration Requirements to Establish Interchangeability. Appendix 6 lays down provisions related to bioanalytical method validation and is derived from the EMA guideline on bioanalytical method validation. Appendix 7 provides requirements for the bioequivalence clinical study report and is based on a similar document issued by the Brazilian Anvisa. Rules for investigation of biological medicinal products are also an important source of regulatory and technical information that was enacted. The main sources for this document, containing 18 chapters and dozens of subchapters, are ICH and EMA guidelines. However, the classification of biological products is based on conventions provided in Directive 2001/83, together with the list maintained by the CMDH for non-biotechnological products. Almost all chapters and subchapters represent translations of respective ICH and EMA guidelines, with only minor, if any at all, amendments. Chapter 1 is based on ICH Q5D, derivation and characterization of cell substrates used for production of biotechnological biological products. Chapter 2 is based on ICH Q5A, viral safety evaluation of biotechnology products derived from cell lines of human or animal origin. Chapter 3 is based on the EMA guideline on virus safety evaluation of biotechnological investigational medicinal products. Chapter 4 is based on the EMA note for guidance on virus validation studies, the design, contribution, and interpretation of studies validating the inactivation and removal of viruses. Chapter 5.1 corresponds to the EMA guideline on production and quality control of medicinal products derived by recombinant DNA technology. Chapter 5.2 corresponds to ICH Q5B, analysis of the expression construct in cells used to production of rDNA-derived protein products. Chapter 5.3 corresponds to ICH S6, preclinical safety evaluation of biotechnology-derived pharmaceuticals. Chapter 6 is based on ICH Q6B, specifications, test procedures and acceptance criteria for biotechnological biological products. Chapter 7 corresponds to the EMA position statement on DNA and host cell protein impurities, routine testing versus validation studies. Chapter 8 represents ICH Q5C, stability testing of biotechnological biological products. Chapter 9.1 corresponds to ICH Q5E, comparability of biotechnological biological products subject to changes in their manufacturing process and the quality level, and Chapter 9.2 corresponds to the EMA guideline on comparability of biotechnology-derived medicinal products after change in the manufacturing process, non-clinical and clinical issues. Chapter 10 is based on the EMA guideline on development, production, characterization, and specifications for monoclonal antibodies and related products. Chapter 11 corresponds to the EMA guideline on immunogenicity assessment of biotechnology-derived therapeutic proteins. Chapter 12 is based on the EMA guideline on immunogenicity assessment of monoclonal antibodies intended for in vivo clinical use. Chapter 13 corresponds to the EMA guidance on development pharmaceutics for biotechnological and biological products. Chapter 14 outlines the requirements for quality documentation concerning biological investigational medicinal products in clinical trials and corresponds to the respective EMA guideline. Chapter 15, including subchapters 15.1 to 15.11, contains regulations and technical information on biosimilar medicinal products. Chapter 15 corresponds to the EMA guideline on similar biological medicinal products. Chapters 15.1 and 15.2 correspond to the respective EMA guidelines on quality and non-clinical and clinical aspects of biosimilar products. Chapters 15.3 to 15.11 contain product-specific guidance and correspond to the 9 respective product-specific EMA guidelines. Chapter 16 is based on the EMA guideline on adjuvants in vaccines for human use. Chapter 17 corresponds to the EMA guideline on the clinical development of products for specific immunotherapy for the treatment of allergic diseases. And Chapter 18 provides information on manufacturing, quality, non-clinical, and clinical studies of bacteriophages. It has no references to the foreign regulatory guidance documents. Requirements for labeling of medicinal products for human use and veterinary medicinal products were separated from the main product information document, which is the requirements for the medication guide and summary of product characteristics of medicinal products for human use. This is due to historical reasons for reviewing the product labeling together with the pharmaceutical information. However, selected provisions of the EU legal acts were included in the requirements. Other important legal acts adopted on the 3rd of November 2016 include documents on GXP inspections, namely, the rules for conducting of pharmaceutical inspections, the procedure for conducting joint pharmaceutical inspections, the recognition of medicinal products manufacturing inspection outcomes, the procedure for establishing and maintaining of the Eurasian Economic Union Pharmaceutical Inspectorates Register, and the common requirements for the quality system of the Eurasian Economic Union member states' pharmaceutical inspectorates. An important role for proper operation of the single market of the Union plays the information infrastructure. To create appropriate databases and registers, the specific procedures have been established, including the procedure for establishment and maintenance of the EAEU Common Register of the authorized medicinal products and on information databases in the area of medicinal products circulation. The procedure for establishment and maintenance of the Eurasian Economic Union Common Register of qualified persons of medicinal products manufacturers. The procedure for communication between Eurasian Economic Union member states on detecting falsified, counterfeit, and substandard medicinal products. Other legal acts in the area of pharmaceutical legislation that were enacted within the package on the 3rd of November 2016 include rules of procedure of the Expert Committee for Medicinal Products, certain issues of medicinal product circulation, procedure for qualification of qualified person of medicinal products manufacturing. It is also worth mentioning the information guide on terms used in medicinal product circulation within the EAEU. Although it is not binding, it is a useful reference of the terms used within the EAEU.